When I was young, I had two game systems growing up, the Nintendo Entertainment System and its super successor later on. So basically, I was a Nintendo kid. I was mostly engulfed in Nintendo branded games, Mario, Zelda, F-Zero to be precise. I was also introduced to a few RPGs such as Final Fantasy IV, Luffy and the Fortress of Doom, and a few others you may or may not have heard of. And of course, there was Mega Man. I had both the classic game and the X game growing up, but I only had their initial releases. I wasn't exposed to any of the sequels, so over time I had to experience those games outside Nintendo hardware. For the classic series, I resorted to using retro websites that had NES games and was able to play the first 6 games, and eventually when I had a Wii and learned how to connect it to the internet, I purchased Mega Man 9 from the Wii Shop channel. The other games I remember looking at walkthroughs for, as I only had Mega Man X and not 7 and never had a PlayStation, so Mega Man 8 was out of the question. And the same could be said for Mega Man X. I wouldn't play the rest of the X series until I played X2 on the Wii's Virtual Console and X3 on the Wii U's Virtual Console and the Mega Man X Collection, where I experienced X4 through X6. When I played both Classic and the X series, I was more fond of the X series than I was with the Classic series. I then revisited the Classic series after the release of the Legacy Collections and Mega Man 11. Now, from here on out, the gloves are coming off because I'll be brutally honest about each entry. I'll mainly focus on the mainline title since this is where most of my exposure of the Classic series led to my experiences. So views on the Classic series varies from person to person. Some say they like it more than the X series, or some say they like other Mega Man series more than the classics. So now I'll evaluate and break down the strengths and weaknesses each game has. And again, no spin-offs. That means no battle and chase, soccer, and power fighters. So, like all stories, it begins at the beginning. But before I talk about the game, take a look at this box art we Americans got. Sight to behold that marked the beginning of a legacy, and honestly gets better at later entries. Take a long look and burn these into your memory. The late 80s and early 90s weren't as kind as one would think. But anyways, on to the show. Starting out with Mega Man, we're in the city of Monsteropolis. Dr. White made 6 robots along with his assistant, Dr. Wily. After the construction of Rock, known as Mega in America, Dr. Wily went astray and turned to evil. Okay, now for the actual synopsis. Dr. Thomas Light was a scientist who was a science partner with Dr. Albert Wily. Dr. Light created an assistant robot named Rock, or Mega, and a housekeeping robot named Roll. After being outclassed by Dr. Light, Dr. Wily went missing, created his own fortress, and vowed to take over the world. To do this, he captured all of Dr. Light's robots, and Mega, after turning into a super fighting robot, became Mega Man. And thus the Wily Wars began. Not to be confused with the Wily Wars on the Genesis. Mega Man battles against 6 robot masters, each with their own stages and fights. Cutman and Bombman are more beginner friendly to start with, Gutsman and Iceman are a bit more challenging, but the heavy hitters are Electman and Fireman. Especially Fireman. Fireman is the most dangerous robot master in this list as he spams his Firestorm and barely giving Mega Man here any ground to step on. This whole fight is a mess and honestly not that fun to go through. Post recording here, I think he may actually be reacting to any time Mega Man fires his buster. The one robot master I enjoy fighting the most is Bombman. Sure, he jumps all over the place, which is often the case with these robot masters, especially Cutman, but Bombman isn't that frustrating. I rather enjoy this one. Cutman jumps and throws his rolling cutter, Iceman has his ice slashers, Electman has his brutal thunder beam, and Gutsman causes tremors every time he jumps, stunning Mega Man in the process and throwing a rock at him. The Magna Beam is the most important item in the game as Mega Man can't reach Wily without it. In the electricity tower, Mega Man has to use his super arm to pick up and throw these blocks to obtain the Magna Beam. If Mega Man doesn't have super arm, then he'll have to traverse through the electricity tower twice. Never choose Electman first. Besides the fights, the levels themselves range from decent to difficult. The most noteworthy are the hazards, specifically the spikes, as their one-hit kill, which goes with all the Mega Man games. Yoku blocks that appear and disappear that require memorization in order to progress. And then there are the foot holders. These platform robots move at random intervals and also shoot from both their sides. Jumping from these robots are very frustrating because their movements aren't consistent, and just when you think Mega Man can make a jump, the foot holders say otherwise. I see you, Pepe, hiding in the corner there. The Frozen Jungle is perhaps the worst level in Mega Man. Jumping on Yoku blocks all while avoiding the annoying Jabriel that moves back and forth. footholders that move randomly and fly over large gaps, which is made worse when Pepes are involved, all wrapped up in nice ice physics that makes movement slippery. And in this game, Mega Man already has slippery movement, making basic movement, especially when jumping over gaps, nearly dreadful. Besides the frozen jungle, the other stages weren't that bad to go through. Even though the overall experience wasn't smooth sailing, I did have some minor enjoyments. That is until Wily's Fortress, where using the weapons are necessary. Using the ice slasher to freeze the fire pillars to step on them. Avoiding spikes as recovering from an attack doesn't grant Mega Man any immunity. And as previously stated, using the magnet beam. Without this, there is no going forward. However, if Mega Man doesn't have enough magnet beam, there are some emerald drops that he can use to keep using it. Unlike in the Wily Wars where they don't spawn and using the magnet beam is either going to be a lifesaver or a soft lock. And let's not forget about the Yellow Devil that is just nerve-wracking to fight. Anticipating his movements and waiting for an opportunity to strike makes this fight aggravating. Not fun at all, and the main reason why people hate the Yellow Devil or devils in general. As Mega Man ventures through the fortress, he'll have to fight the Robot Masters again. Here, he fights Cutman and Electman, but eventually he'll fight the others. This part of the fortress has two problems: the bumpy helis that can knock Mega Man off the platforms, and the copy robot that left a mixed feeling when fighting it. Mega Man can either have a rough time fighting it or make this fight somewhat of a joke with the firestorm. The next part is rather easy in comparison, as this hallway is filled with water, leading up to the CWU-01P, which starts off slow but gains speed as each unit is destroyed. Again, I have mixed feelings about this because this is one of those fights that can be thrilling, but only if you know exactly how this fight works. The last part of the fortress has Mega Man fighting the rest of the Robot Masters, all while avoiding spikes. If there's one thing I hate about this one in particular, is fighting the Robot Masters before Wily. Getting a game over results in Mega Man repeating the level from the beginning, meaning he has to fight the 4 remaining Robot Masters again with no hell drops to speak of. Then comes Wily with his machine that shoots from his cannon, but then shoots spinning lob shots all while the machine goes back and forth. This one really tested my patience because this is the home stretch and I wanted this over as quickly as possible. And when Wily is finally defeated, Mega Man returns home to his family. I guess he didn't think to capture Wily or turn him over to the police. Not yet though. Oh, not yet. Mega Man is honestly rough to go through. Part of me feels like this game was not fully tested, while another part of me felt like they had limited resources to work with. This is a game that could have used another month of polish to ensure that every small detail was addressed, because even the smallest gripes can leave a large impact, and that's important for someone like me. Besides the rough designs, the game has a noteworthy soundtrack that people remember fondly, and the game doesn't look that bad either. I should also note that if you do play Mega Man, you have to beat the game in one sitting. There are no passwords or any way to save. Once you press start, that's a commitment. So pray to God the game doesn't crash or there's suddenly a blackout. This game hasn't really aged all that well, but there are some elements that have. Nonetheless, Capcom back then made more Mega Man games as long as they worked on other titles, so needless to say that Mega Man became one of video games' greatest icons. Before I get into the sequel, Mega Man was remade for the PlayStation Portable titled Mega Man Powered Up. This game has a lot to offer as you play through it, being able to play as Roll, Proto Man, and the Robot Masters, creating your own levels, playing either the new levels or the old ones. It's honestly pretty good. New to power up are the 2 additional Robot Masters, Oil Man and Time Man, which means that weaknesses for the Robot Masters have been altered. I praise the game for the additional content, but gameplay wise it doubles down on the annoyance that the first game had. The footholders continue their random movements and just waiting for the right moment to jump is just as unenthusiastic or just aggravating as before, but made worse here. Cyber Joes and Picklemen are more difficult to defeat this time as they rarely have any openings for Mega Man, leaving him to exploit the tiniest weakness possible. Look how the Cyber Joe just puts his shield up. It's just frustrating trying to shoot one pellet just to damage him. Same goes for the Pickleman unless Hyper Bomb is thrown at the right angle. The most noticeable problem with Powered Up is the screen, this being on a PSP, meaning that either obstacles or enemies will be too close to each other and thus makes dodging enemies, especially the big ones, harder to maneuver around or anticipate. The Steel Foundry is a perfect example of this, as jumping over gaps all while shooting the killer bombs or the screwdrivers is nerve-wracking due to the screen size. Compare this to Mega Man, obviously Mega Man has better viewing than Powered Up does because of a wider perspective. You can clearly see what's up ahead in Mega Man's view, whereas in Powered Up you can barely see what's up front. This also applies to the crazy cannons, as they just shoot Mega Man and barely be on screen. Boss fights are similar to the original game, but on hard mode they have additional moves. Either it's throwing a large cutter, a large bomb, shooting thunder strikes, or summoning icicles. The one I don't like is when Gutsman burrows on the ground and has no indication on when he rises with his block, which may or may not hit Mega Man when he jumps out of the way. As for the fortress fights, the Yellow Devil moves slower, but due to how close everything is, this makes dodging his parts a bit more difficult. The CWU-01P is made even worse here. The room is smaller in comparison to Mega Man. The water bubble needs to be small enough so Mega Man doesn't get hurt. The speed this thing goes is made even worse, especially when it fires his laser, which results to me pause buffering just to keep up, and it gets worse. The third part of the fortress has the second round where Mega Man fights the Robot Masters again, or projection. If Mega Man gets a game over after defeating all the Robot Masters a second time, he has to fight them all over again. And to make matters worse, this area does not drop any health upon defeating a single Robot Master. This then leads to the copy robot fight, where the copy has charge shots, and powered up, beating the game allows the option to choose either a charge shot or a slide. Personally, I don't know why he didn't have both from the get-go. But the jumping is what makes this fight annoying. When Mega Man tries to jump over him to avoid him, the copy robot says otherwise and jumps right at him. This fight is so much worse than the copy fight in Mega Man. Absolutely annoying. I hate this. And the Wily fight isn't all that better. Now, in its defense, the idea of Wily's machine using the Royal Master's weapons is intriguing, but paying attention to the capsule color all while shooting at the machine is kinda counterintuitive. Mega Man has to focus on defeating Wily, but now he has to focus on the color of his capsule, which is barely noticeable when focusing on shooting and dodging, especially when Wily charges at Mega Man when his legs are exposed. I honestly didn't know what to do and found out that his charge needs to be countered with the corresponding weakness. Between this and the machine from Mega Man, I prefer the machine fight from Mega Man. At least that requires just shooting it to destroy it and nothing else. I honestly wish Powered Up left a more positive impression on me, but I can't overlook or ignore the accentuated problems this game has. Should Capcom ever consider remaking Mega Man, it's probably best to remake the classic games in a new style or revamp Powered Up so that it gets the improvements that it desperately needs. Mega Man is rough, but Powered Up is even rougher. After his first defeat, Dr. Wily creates his own Robot Masters to defeat Mega Man. Mega Man battles against these Robot Masters and defeats them and sets his sights on Dr. Wily, who turns out to be an alien? Nah, the alien is actually a projection that isn't water resistant. And then Mega Man travels through the seasons, I guess. Mega Man 2, I would say, doubles down on the hazards in the stages, whether it be spikes on the ceiling, instant kill lasers, and even vertical highways with spikes on the sides. These are setups that more Mega Man games will have later on, and the classic series is honestly better off without them. I'm going to be blunt here, I hate the instant kill lasers in the underground lab, and I'm not fond of the enemy placement from time to time, as Mega Man will take damage out of nowhere. And then there are the Yoku blocks. They weren't too much of a problem in Mega Man, excluding the frozen jungle, but they are really annoying in the waste disposal center, especially the ones that appear over Mega Man's head. The bosses are more difficult this time as they're more agile and do a good chunk of damage. Or if they're Bubble Man. The one I hate the most is Quick Man. He just moves all over the place, jumps around, and just throws his quick boomerangs really quick. Quick Man sucks. I hate him. The Quartz Cave is riddled with returning Sniper Joes that pilot sniper armor. If Mega Man gets pinched with these guys or encounters one in a tight tunnel, he's gonna have a hard time fighting them. Then there are the PPs at the pipeline tower that drop their eggs on Mega Man when he's climbing the ladder, which is to say he's completely vulnerable unless he has the leaf shield. Speaking of, Woodman here loves to hop towards Mega Man all while using leaves to attack him. If he's close enough, Mega Man will have to distance himself from him just to avoid the leaf shield. One more thing I hate about Mega Man 2 is how there are areas that either have an E-tank or a 1-up, but these are only accessible if Mega Man has the items to cross the gap afterwards, if he has enough. So getting these E-tanks and 1-ups can be a potential trap if Mega Man doesn't have or not enough of the items, specifically item number 2. And then the items are essential for traversing through Wily's castle. Later on, Mega Man will have to make good use of the items and other weapons, especially in the fourth part of the castle where he has to find out which part of the floor is fake, which are right above spikes. Then there are the boom beam trap where only the crash bomber can destroy them. If Mega Man doesn't have enough crash bomber or the third item or simply use them incorrectly, he'll have to take the plunge and start over. This is the worst part of Mega Man 2, and even the alien has his own weakness problems where only the bubble lead can damage it. Again, using sparingly. To be honest, I find Mega Man 2 frustrating to play. I managed to find some minor enjoyment out of this entry, but ultimately this wasn't a good time for me. After Wily's second defeat, he created another batch of robot masters. As Mega Man finds and destroys them, he encounters another robot by the name of Breakman, which is later revealed to be Mega Man's older brother, Proto Man. He challenges Mega Man on several occasions and even helps him after he defeats Wily. This marks the debut of Proto Man, the lone wolf robot and brother of Mega Man. Level design wise, Mega Man 3 excels over Mega Man 2 as it doesn't have any of the infuriating designs that 2 had. No instant kill lasers, no bosses that require a specific weapon, no bad enemy placement, but I have my fair share of struggles. The Snake Tower is home of the Petite Snakies and the Big Snaky, but I found the latter half of the stage to be a bit more enjoyable than the first. Then there's a giant power plant with the electric Jabual that Mega Man has to maneuver through and the junk blocks that Mega Man has to avoid being crushed by. Yoga blocks return at the magnetic generator, but they're not too bad this time, excluding the magnet. Boss fights can range from simple such as Top Man, challenging such as Gemini Man or Magnet Man, hard such as Needle Man, and well, Hard Man, and complete bogus such as Shadow Man, which is the worst fight in the game. The way he hops around makes me feel all fidgety trying to anticipate his attacks, the worst being his slide attack because it always seems to catch me off guard. I seriously hate this fight. It's one of the worst Robot Master fights in the series. Not fun at all. New to Mega Man 3 is a slide and rush the robot dog who can help Mega Man either reach higher places with its coil, turn into a jet that Mega Man can ride on, and can turn into a marine pod that Mega Man can plant underwater. The weapons aren't really that intriguing to me. Mega Man can either shoot a needle, a spark, a snake that travels on the ground, a laser that bounces off the walls, a spin that can be fatal, or a rocket punch with a delayed start time. My favorite weapons in 3 are the Shadow Blade that can be aimed in multiple directions, and the Magnet Missile that homes in on enemies. After defeating the Robot Masters from Mega Man 2 return in the form of Dock Robots. Robots that embody the abilities of other robots. Mega Man now has to travel back to the construction site, Mirror Cavern, Giant Power Plant, and the sewer system just to fight the Dock Robots. And keep in mind that Mega Man has different weapons this time around, so we'll have to figure out which robot is weak against what. This part of the game is just completely unnecessary. After battling against Breakman, Mega Man can finally go after Wily, who has stolen a robot named Gamma. The castle this time around is not that bad, except the Hapsu Bee is a nuisance that drops in bees in front of Mega Man, which then forces him down a pit of spikes. Then there's Yellow Devil. Ugh. Then after the next part of the castle, Mega Man faces off against not 1, not 2, but 3 copy robots that have precision aiming. Mega Man wishes he had this type of aim. This fight sucks, by the way. Then after that, Mega Man fights the Robot Masters again. Just don't step in the teleporter before grabbing the health, or avoid the teleporter before grabbing the health because Mega Man will be teleported out instantly. Then there's the Wily machine that has a cannon which must be dispatched quickly. Wily reveals himself and he shoots lob shots and can potentially crush Mega Man if he's under him. I have mixed feelings about this. Then comes Gamma that isn't too big of a deal with the Shadow Blade. Then comes Wily with Gamma, and you'll never believe what the weakness is. Top spin. Who knew? Proto Man rescues Mega Man and Wily manages to escape. Mega Man 3 is slightly better than Mega Man 2, but that's not saying much because 3 has its own problems. The Dark Robots, Shadow Man, Yellow Devil, the underwhelming weapons, and the copy robots. 3 is an improvement over 2, but it still misses the mark. Mega Man 4 is a near improvement that I've been waiting for throughout this run so far. Mega Man can now charge his buster and can find 2 items, the balloon and the grappling hook. The balloon works similar to the first item from Mega Man 2, and by looking up, Mega Man can use the grappling hook to cling onto ceilings. These are helpful when needed and when used properly. Those this time around aren't that bad to go through and can be interesting at times. My favorite being the lightning control system as Mega Man rides on these battens to cross a field of spikes while shooting down these totem polens, and I do like how shooting the 100 watt taunt darkens the room, but shooting the don't bend lights it up again, and the swinging platforms were quite thrilling. And the space simulator wasn't that bad either. Love the transition from sky to space, and these coil platforms here that scroll depending if it's either rainbow or metal or neat. I like them to some extent. I don't mind the Cuppleton Q or the Whoppers either. Boss fights are a mixed bag for me. Toadman here is just a pushover as Toad in Legends. And then there are fights like Dive Man, Skull Man, Dust Man that uses 2 attacks. Brightman either jumps around, shoots, or freezes Mega Man in place. And then there's Ringman, who I might say is the most dangerous of the bunch. As far as weapons go, they're pretty good. The Ring Flash wipes out everything in sight. Flash Stopper stops time briefly and is much better than the Time Stopper from 2 and the Time Slow from Powered Up, as everything stops momentarily without draining the whole bar or just slowing down time. And it's also funny using this on Pharaoh Man. The Pharaoh shot is a big ball of Pharaoh stuff that could be thrown above or below, but I really wish I had more uses for the Dive Missile and the Drill Bomb. Dive Missile is an enemy chaser, the Drill Bomb is a drill bomb. Same can be said for the Ring Boomerang, and the Skull Barrier is reliable at times. Mega Man 4 is a game where enemies popping out of holes becomes more apparent, more than Mega Man 1. This will be something that will become more of a problem as the series goes on, I assure you. After defeating all the Robot Masters, Mega Man makes his way through Dr. Cossack's castle. The terrain here is slippery, but the level here isn't all that bad, until Mega Man reaches the top where he has to climb these ladders that had ladder presses on them. Not to worry, Mega Man can just use Rush to skip this nonsense. The second part of the castle has some slide sections here, some ladder climbing here, and a giant spike floor. This is where Rush is essential. Hopefully there's plenty of rush jet. Afterwards, there's an auto scroll section. This was brief in Mega Man 2, but this time it happens in 2 sections. They're not really that bad, so I kinda like this. Making the final sphere to Dr. Cossack and the trip there is simplistic. Not too much happens here and it's better that way. After destroying Dr. Cossack's skill crane, his daughter Kalinka is set free as she was held captive by Dr. Wily to force Dr. Cossack to fight Mega Man. Now that Wily's been exposed, Mega Man now has to chase down and defeat Wily again. The first part of the castle is riddled with metars and spikes, both on land and underwater. There's even a big metar at the end. The second part had some sliding sections and some questionable spike placement and just spikes in general. The last part is the second round with all the Robot Masters. Do not get a game over here. Boss fights overall are simply alright. There wasn't any that completely enraged me, not even the Cockroach Twins or the Taco Trash, but the Square Machine is quite the speeder, I might add. The one fight I cannot stand with any part of my being is Wily. He's only vulnerable to the Pharaoh shot and somewhat vulnerable to the Ring Boomerang. He is completely immune to the rest of the weapons, including the Mega Buster. I hate when bosses are immune to the standard weapon because what that means is that if Mega Man runs out of the weapon that bosses are weak to, he's basically stuck and that calls for a redo. I hate this so much. After a few charged up Pharaoh shots, Wily goes down and then escapes via a secret door. Mega Man then escapes the exploding castle. Again, Mega Man 4 is a near improvement compared to the last entries, but there are some problems that need to be addressed, such as certain spike placements and Wily being immune to everything but Pharaoh shot and Ring Boomerang. There are a few enemies that I honestly don't like, such as the up and downs that appear from holes and the mono riders that are annoying to shoot at when they start spinning. Overall, this is a step up from the last games, and the series starts showing some improvements from here on out. Mega Man 5 is the game that not only does the gameplay improve, but so does its presentation. This is by far the best looking Mega Man NES game. Stages have more detail in comparison to the previous entries. The Highlands, the water reservoir, transport train, even the crystal mines. These are great looking stages and I applaud Mega Man 5 for it. Mega Man's charge shot has been improved as the shot is now bigger than last time. As for weapons, they're a bit more versatile this time. Mega Man now has a charge kick weapon. The gyro attack can be aimed after being shot, and there are those basic weapons that either travel on the ground, a barrier that can be launched at enemies, your typical bombs, or the Power Stone that shoots out 3 spiraling stones. This is more of a hit or miss weapon, but I found some uses for it. As for boss fights, they're either easy to understand, such as Stone Man, Gravity Man, or Star Man, but for Gyro Man, Wave Man, and even Charge Man and Crystal Man took some time to learn how they fight. I think the most difficult one for me is Gyro Man, as I had a hard time anticipating where he would drop from the clouds. I think my favorite stage in this game would have to be the Gravity Research Institute. It's actually kind of enjoyable being able to walk on ceilings via these gravity poles. The biggest negative I have with Mega Man 5 is collecting the letters. Each stage has a letter to obtain in order to get beat, the little bird robot that was built by Dr. Cossack. If for some reason Mega Man misses a letter, he'll have to go through the exact same stage again just to get it. After beating all the Robot Masters, Mega Man now pursues Proto Man, who was suspected of capturing Dr. Light. Whether it's spike traps, hopping on Yoku blocks, or skipping them in this case, hopping on small conveyor belts all while shooting these bomb bears, climbing ladders as usual, and also riding this block snake, and of course, avoiding getting crushed. I have mixed feelings about this. In between these stages, Mega Man fights what are known as Dark Men of the Tank barrier, shooting, and a hybrid of the barrier and shooting variety. Turns out that the last Dark Man was impersonating Proto Man the entire time, and Dr. Light was held in Dr. Wily's castle. At this time, I've grown accustomed to what Wily's castles are made of. Spiked hallways, spikes on ceilings, giant gaps, crushing hazards this time around, and of course the refights. There's even an underwater section to boot. What I hate most about this castle is the spike drop that you can't see. There is such a thing as choosing a wrong side. For the bosses, there's Big Pets that has 2 sections that react when shot at, Sir King Q9 with 2 hatches that open periodically, all while launches pellets, big balls, and some battle physical contact. Then there's Wily, who results on crushing tactics, a tank that fires missiles and blue balls. Then there's the Wily capsule with his usual plasma ball routine. Good thing Beat's here to save the day. Dr. Light is then set free, and with Mega Man's super strength that he mustered up at the last minute, everyone escapes with Proto Man watching from the background. Mega Man 5 is showing signs that the classic franchise is showing improvement, for the most part. 4 was a step in the right direction, and I feel that 5 doubles down on that, but there were still problems that needed to be addressed. Enemies popping in after being defeated, spikes all over the place, making an apparent bad jump, and missing items that results in Mega Man going through the same stages again. Literally the same problem that Nintendo games have. Mega Man 5 is so far the best one, but let's see how the last NES Mega Man game, Mega Man 6, ranks against 5. The first annual robot tournament was held with 8 of the world's most powerful robots, but this spectacle was cut short when the tournament sponsor, Mr. X, took control of the robots to begin his world domination scheme. Now Mega Man must do what he does best and fight out the robot menaces. This time around, Mega Man goes around the world, from the ancient city in Greece, to the oil field in Arabia, to the impregnable fortress at Mount Fuji. And to be honest, these stages aren't that bad, although you get those spikes galore stages like Ancient City and Capital of Science. There were some that I actually enjoyed. Oil field, impregnable fortress, and even the restricted area were enjoyable at times. And then there were some mixed feeling stages like Forgotten Basin with its bounty gimmicks, Frozen Island with its bomb platforms, Squidons that shoots boxes and missiles, and this iconic boat section, and Mechanical Tower with its wind gimmicks mixed with either spikes or cannon pillars. Boss fights are either simple to get through like Nightman and Plant Man, provide some challenge such as Yamato Man, Blizzard Man, or Tomahawk Man, or fights that tested me such as Centaur Man with its time-stopping ability, Flame Man, and Wind Man, which really tested me. Stages this time have alternate routes, and when Mega Man goes through these routes, he can acquire Beat the Bird, who might say was noticeably downgraded. Unlike his triumphant victory against Dr. Wily from the last entry, Beat cannot target bosses. He can target other enemies just fine, but bosses are a no-go this time. Rush, however, receives some amazing upgrades. After attaining the respected adapters, Rush can transform into either a power form or flying form. The power form allows Mega Man to punch powerful energy charges, which can either send enemies flying or destroy these cracked blocks. Mega Man cannot slide in this form, and his attacks are only effective at close range. The flying form allows Mega Man to basically use a jetpack. This is mostly useful when traversing through platforms at a high altitude. Mega Man can either slide or charge the Buster. Also, 80 stops by every now and then to give Mega Man an edge. Besides some stage hazards that I wasn't quite fond of and how this game handles alternate routes, Mega Man 6 so far showed promise, but how far will that feeling last when going after Mr. X? If Mega Man manages to avoid any spike contact, then going through the Mr. X stages should be a breeze. But the third stage, however, has these weights that Mega Man needs to add pressure to in order to avoid spikes. The bosses here are kinda odd. The Rhino-2 that moves accordingly to the railing, the Power Piston creates tremors on the wall that causes rocks to fall, the Metonga Z, a mecha that's powered by a Metar, and there's Mr. X himself and his X Crusher. The last Mr. X stage is the most perilous one, a room filled with wall blasters that Mega Man may or may not have to take force damage from should he find himself in a tight spot, large gaps in between small footholds, all while avoiding peaks that chase Mega Man. After defeating Mr. X, who was Dr. Wily the whole time, Mega Man goes after Wily again. This is where the Wily castle goes back to its usual hazardous antics. Spikes all over the place while mixing in previous gimmicks and underwater sections, Yokobank rooms, and helpful items that are awfully risky to take. But at least the bosses are greatly designed in this castle, my favorite being the tank CSII, as Mega Man has to shoot the body to push it back, all while shooting the cannon on top. One refight session later, and Mega Man fights Dr. Wily, this time in another crushing machine. The capsule fight was a bit easier this time, but at least it isn't immune to the Buster, that's what's most important. Afterwards, Mega Man ties up Wily with a rope and sends him to jail, thus concluding the NES Mega Man games. 6 is without question the best classic Mega Man game on the NES. Although it still has some classic elements such as Spike Silver and the occasional Yoku box at the end, it doesn't double down on the gimmicks that the other games possess. No instant kill lasers, no yellow devils, no sections that requires weapons, none of that. I can take my time and not be penalized for either not having enough weapon energy or lacking something altogether. Plus, no surprise spike jumps just because Mega Man jumped on the wrong side. Plus, there's the inclusion of the rush adapters that drastically changes the game in an enjoyable way. Mega Man 6 ditches most of the problems the classic games had thus far and introduces mechanics and gameplay aspects that could help innovate the classic gameplay in the future titles. And yet, it does. I'll be blunt for the sake of time on this one. Mega Man 7 is the best classic game ever made. After Wily's arrest, his robot masters were set free in due time and broke him out of prison. Mega Man gives chase and liberates the city of robots. He then meets Bass and Treble, who recognizes Mega Man's strength. Mega Man then goes after the robot masters and tries to stop Wily at the robot museum, where he steals Gutsman. Why even have robot masters in the museum and not just replicas? Afterwards, Bass wrecks Dr. Light's lab after he sought Dr. Light for repairs and basically stole blueprints for the enhancements for Mega Man and Rush. Now Mega Man storms Wily's castle to find the Doctor and bring him to justice, fighting Bass and Treble as he goes. When he finally defeats Dr. Wily, instead of bringing him to justice, he instead points his charged Mega Buster at Wily and attempts to kill him. But surprise, some debris crashes on Wily and miraculously he survives, but Bass and Treble intervene and save Wily before the castle explodes. Mega Man walks out of the castle in such a morally conflicting yet epic fashion as he returns home to his family. Huge step up in story for the classic series. I'm pretty sure people were fed up with Wily's usual antics to escape, so seeing Mega Man attempting to kill Wily was a worthwhile improvement. Speaking of Wily, he steps his game up by creating Bass and Treble, two robots that will no doubt be more of a match for Mega Man and Rush in the future. Mega Man 7, in a way, takes notes from the X series and does something similar. The game begins with the intro stage, the Ruined Street, and after defeating the first 4 robot masters, Mega Man goes to a mid-stage at the Robot Museum. In addition, there are items and power-ups to find, similar to Mega Man 4 through 6, except this time it's much better. The most obvious is the ability to exit stages when Mega Man finds or purchases an escape unit. This is essential when looking for items because there is no way to simply leave. Mega Man has to go through the whole level again in order to keep the item he collected. I'm not going to give Mega Man 1 too much criticism for it, as it was the first game at the time and not everything was figured out, but by Mega Man 5, there should have been a solution to address this issue. Now in 7, because there are way more items to find, an escape unit is introduced to mitigate the padding playtime. For all you completionists out there, get the Rush Search, use it the last step at the iceberg area before entering the first door to fight Freeze Man, and grab that escape unit. It will help immensely. Other items and power-ups include the Rush Adapter, which brings back the Jet from 6 and includes a Rocket Punch, I have a Rocket Buster that enhances the Rocket Punch of the Rush Adapter, the Energy Equalizer, which restores weapon energy without the need to switch to weapons to refill it, and the Proto Shield that blocks attacks. This is obtainable after encountering Proto Man in other stages and then fighting him in the hidden room at the Horror Fortress. If searching for items isn't your strong suit, then there's always buying them. Enemies drop screws that Mega Man can use to purchase items. E-Tanks, W-Tanks, 1-ups, and after obtaining Otto's boat at the Spring Plaza, the cost of items is greatly reduced. I don't mind backtracking as often just to find things, but knowing where to use the Rush Search takes a good sense of curiosity just to find anything, like on a specific platform, or maybe under a piece of a background, or just someplace random. So far, I praise the story and item searching to some extent, but the actual game is the best the classic series will have. The Ruined Street serves as a testing ground to use what you know, running, jumping, shooting, the basics. Then comes the stages with their own gimmicks. The chemistry lab has this liquid that can elevate Mega Man to higher places, the weather station that feels like a homage to the Sky Bridge from Mega Man 2, but also changes if the weather is rainy or snowy. Forgotten Factory is your typical classic Mega Man level, but with junk and lava. Iceberg area has ice that breaks when stepped on and little icicles to use as platforms. The Spring Plaza is built with springs, Jurassic Jungle has robot dinosaurs that are either hostile or helpful. The Horror Fortress is probably my favorite stage in the game, and not just because it has the Ghost and Goblin secret. It's not perfect, these raggers get the jump on Mega Man without so much as a warning, and the Van Puken can actually be defeated by either shooting the core or the ice, which isn't telegraphed properly, but for everything else, I like it. Using Scorch Wheel to light up the torches, or using the Triumph Thunder to see temporarily. The intro when Mega Man sets foot in the level. and I just like the aesthetic overall. It's like Ghosts and Goblins and Castlevania mixed together. The garage is my least favorite. Mega Man starts getting chased by a truck Joe, these tires that impede Mega Man's jumps and bounce him back into spikes, and the instant kill lasers take the form of these fire bursts. Despite my praising of Mega Man 7, this is still a classic Mega Man game. That means there are Yoku blocks, numerous instant kill hazards, enemies popping from bottomless pits, but no yellow devils, thank God. Also, weapons refill in the Wily stages. No need to constantly worry about conserving them. In the other games, going through the Wily levels didn't restore weapon energy. That is not the case in Mega Man 7, and I applaud it for that. The bosses are actually pretty tough. The one that gave me the most trouble was Slash Man, because anytime Mega Man gets hit by those eggs or steps on the yoke, he can't either attack or move, and Slash Man dies right at him. It took me a couple of tries before finally defeating him. My favorite fight would have to be Freeze Man, as he kept the pace going and hardly stopped the flow of movement. Bosses like Burst Man, Cloud Man, and Junk Man have moments when they prepare their attacks, or bosses like Shade Man where Mega Man will have to anticipate what he'll do. As far as weapons go, there were some that I liked and some I managed to find some use for. My favorites are the Thunderbolt, Junk Shield, and the Slash Claw. The ones I treated as situational were the Danger Rat, Freeze Cracker, and the Scorch Wheel. The Wild Color Noise Crush can be charged, though the process of charging the Noise Crush is weird. The shot needs to recoil back at Mega Man in order for the weapon to charge, and the Wild Cone can actually go higher if the charge is fired while holding up on the D-pad. I honestly didn't know that until the very end. The Wily stages have some neat gimmicks. Stepping on light switches, freezing the fire bars to use as platforms, which is tricky and suicidal to pull off this time, but interesting nonetheless. Ladders, platforms with barely any vision, and this will replace Mentor right here. More ladders, this essentially reminds me of Super Mario World, and Yoku blocks. Only in classic Mega Man. After a second round against Roadmasters, Mega Man fights the hardest Wily fight yet, right after he gets rid of this machine. This time, Wily can either freeze or burn Mega Man, which if he's frozen, he'll be immobilized, or if he's burned, he'll take 6 points of damage. Though I think I may have found a way to shake out of this. Turns out that this fight was hard on purpose, as Keiji Inafune intentionally wanted this fight to be the hardest fight in the series. And just throwing this out there, there's also a multiplayer mode you can try. I never tried this before, but hey, it's there. If you're in the mood for some ROM hacks, there's one that completely removes the passwords in theory for just saving and loading, one that weakens spikes so they don't cause instant kill, and bosses that text when selected. Overall, Mega Man 7.
This is the one!
Mega Man 8 is weird. Gameplay wise it's weird, but presentation wise it's the best looking and best sounding game in the series. This is also the first and only game to have animated cinematics and voice acting that rivals that of Resident Evil.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
I would go so far to say that the voice acting is even worse than Mega Man X4. It's that notorious. So about the voice acting, Capcom wanted Mega Man to appeal more to a younger audience, hence why he's voiced by a lady and sounds more feminine because of it.
Hey, Zach! Why must I fight you? We are not enemies!
I'm convinced that whoever voiced Dr. Light was a Japanese man that tried to speak English because I can only hear a Japanese accent coming from him. He even almost calls Mega Man Rockman.
You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
But other than that, the voice direction here is not great. Everyone doesn't seem to talk properly and it comes off as a jarring and unsettling sometimes. Even the Robot Masters don't sound right.
I'll crush you. I'll make a popsicle of you.
I'll make you join my man. I'm Aquaman, but you can call me Handsome Guy.
In fact, the only Robot Masters that I do like are Grenade Man, Sword Man, and Astro Man.
I'll be nice on you.
I won't hold back.
I come here, but I don't know what to do.
So yeah, voice acting is not the best. But the opposite could be said for the gameplay. Mega Man still maintains all the fundamentals, all while presenting mechanics that only 8 has, 2 of which that are presented from the beginning. Mega Man receives a new weapon from Dr. Light called the Mega Ball, where Mega Man can either kick the ball from a good angle to inflict damage or use it to jump higher. This has become an abusive weapon to use for speedrunning, as Mega Man can just skip through small sections or perhaps an entire section altogether. And then there's swimming. I'm guessing Mega Man became a little buoyant in this entry because this is the only game in the series stage where you can actually swim, and swimming in this doesn't feel that bad. It doesn't have the same feel as Donkey Kong Country or Mario, but the swimming is simply okay nonetheless. Mega Man has a similar setup to Mega Man 7. First comes an intro stage, 4 Robot Master stages, a mid-level, the remaining 4 Robot Master stages, and then Wily Tower, consisting of 4 stages, and each has their own unique gimmick. The explosives in the ammunition factory, flying on rush, and Tengu Sky Base kind of reminds me of Gradius or UN Squadron, as well as some windy antics, the infamous jump side and crushing icebox in Arctic City, and the teleporting boxes in Robot Circus. All that leads to the inner mountains, which is more of a descent. Afterwards, 4 more stages are available, and I consider these the more puzzling of the bunch. The ancient temple is definitely puzzling as there are actual puzzles to solve, some of which requires the weapons that Mega Man acquired thus far. The jungle outpost is mostly about using the Thunderclaw to swing around. Flooded colony is mostly underwater with some platforming on dry land, and the planetarium is probably the most interesting. First comes jumping on platforms that appear only at daytime, then comes a maze with doors that are activated by switches, then an entire room that sinks in sand that Mega Man needs to climb out of. And honestly, I like the variety here. Sure, the maze takes some time to figure out, especially when gathering screws, but I kinda liked how this all progressed, even if it meant some trial and error in the mazes. Fights against Robot Masters weren't that bad either. The only one I had a bad time with was Searchman. The disc that bounced off the walls and the homing sites were giving me a rough time. Aquaman was also a tough one with his water balloons and how the water traps Mega Man's movement. Other than that, the fights were alright. My favorite one being Grenade Man, as I found this fight quite motivating and loved how he destroys the ground with his explosives. Wily Tower, however, is a mixed bag for me. It starts with an aggressive boarding section that doubles down on the jumps, then some swinging action that leads to the Atatamio, which requires a well-aimed Mega Ball to defeat it. It drops crates that either shoots missiles or ammo drops that can refill the Mega Ball. Then after climbing some ladders, Mega Man rides on Rush again for some more Gradius UN Squadron action. The boss this time, Blanking, requires the components to be destroyed. I honestly did not defeat this thing at first, so I just relied on instinct to figure out what was vulnerable. The third stage has these bomb platforms and a Garigoro that throws a rock that Mega Man needs to stand on. If this Garigoro is destroyed before the rock is thrown, there is no traversing across. After that, Base and Treble drop by to settle things with Mega Man, this time with evil energy. Not a bad base fight, probably the best in the series. After some very tight platforming, Mega Man encounters a green devil. Thankfully not a yellow devil, because Lord knows I have enough of those. This one is actually interesting as it goes through the hole in the floor and either tries to impale Mega Man or creates what I call a devil wave. This is devil I can tolerate more than the yellow devil counterpart. After a traditional rematch with all the Robot Masters, it's off to fight Wily. This machine might be my favorite one, as Mega Man has to focus on closing its laser mouth and avoid either the electro balls or the buzzsaw. After that, the usual capsule fight. Thankfully not as hard as the last one, but still difficult with how it attacks. So overall, I like the stages more than the fight. There are also some mid-bosses that Mega Man fights, so there's more fighting in this one. Some of these are actually fun to go through, while there are some that were troublesome. Weapons this time around are actually fun to use. My absolute favorite being the Flash Bomb for the additional damage it does after an explosion, the Ice Wave that clears ground and wall enemies, Flame Sword that is a great close-range weapon, and Tornado Hold, which really helps when trying to reach high places. I did find some use for the Water Balloon, Homing Sniper, and the Thunderclaw, but the previous mentioned weapons were the ones that found the most usage. And Astro Crush is great for wiping out a large room of enemies, though it consumes a lot of energy. I actually prefer the Centaur Flash because of how instant it is. Screws this time are collectibles instead of drops, so there will be moments where Mega Man can obtain or just miss a screw. So buying the escape unit is once again top priority. Some items make their return in the lab, but for some odd reason, there are no E-tanks or W-tanks to get. The only way to restore both health and weapon energy is to summon Rush to drop the items all over the ground. I like the idea, but I prefer the usual tanks to use in a pinch. Lastly, there's a story which I haven't spoken of yet. Mega Man and Base are engaged in combat until Roll crashes the reunion and Mega Man leaves Base, leaving Base more eager to settle things with Mega Man. Dr. Light contacts Mega Man regarding a strange island giving up a huge energy reading. Mega Man investigates and finds the energy, which Dr. Wily steals in front of him. Mega Man also finds a robot that he brings back to Dr. Light's lab, who wakes up and steals to collect the evil energy that Mega Man found after defeating 4 Robot Masters. Mega Man pursues the robot and fights him briefly. He flees towards Wily's tower and Mega Man pursues, only to be grabbed and nearly shocked to death, screaming for a really long time. In fact, in the script it reads, Scream as if you're falling down a hole. Luckily, the robot that Mega Man fought earlier named Duo saves Mega Man, destroys the robot, and grabs the evil energy inside. Duo explains that his mission is to find and eliminate the evil energy that plagues the universe. Due to evil energy, Wily Tower is protected by a barrier, so Mega Man gathers the last of the evil energy to infiltrate the tower, where he fights Bass and eventually Wily. Mega Man succeeds, but Wily has one more track to pull. The tower explodes with Mega Man barely living. Duo extracts the evil energy from him and Mega Man lives on. As for Duo, he continues his own mission in outer space. Now, this is just speculation, but the evil energy could be how Wily creates his virus later in the series. The virus that Wily creates will set the future in stone, as many will see later in the X series. But who's to say that the evil energy was the only virus outbreak? To close Mega Man 8, it is a beautiful looking game with great weapons to use, which Mega Man could use alongside his Mega Buster at the same time, all topped off with the best soundtrack in the series. The setbacks are the absence of tanks, amateurish voice acting, and getting this screw right here. This took me multiple tries. But if you didn't have a PlayStation back in the day, chances are you had a Super Nintendo and wanted to play Mega Man 8. That's where Mega Man and Bass comes in, and to be completely honest, you're better off playing Mega Man 8 than Bass. But if you live in the Badlands of America, then this game was only available on Game Boy Advance, so your best bet is to seek out an English translation of the Super Nintendo version. In the beginning, you have the choice to select either Mega Man or Bass to start the game, but I think swapping between the characters during gameplay, similar to Mega Man X7, would have been better than simply choosing which character to play as, resulting in playing this game twice. Mega Man is the same as he was since Mega Man 4, the sliding, the charge shot, same as always. Bass is more agile than Mega Man is. He can dash, double jump, and aim his buster in multiple directions. He can't charge his shots, but he can shoot his buster rapidly. Both characters play differently, have their own take on the story with their own dialogue, and have unique items that get purchased from the shop. Stages, boss fights, and progression are the same, but the experience will vary depending on the character. Bass can dash jump and use his double jump to cross large gaps or reach high places, but Mega Man can slide through tight spaces that lead to alternate routes. So each character has their own strengths and weaknesses. Their mobility will be tested throughout their runs of the stages, and attack power will be the key factor during boss fights. Mega Man can use his charge shots to dispatch bosses with either quick succession or at a moderate pace. Bass, since he lacks attack power compared to Mega Man, goes through these fights slower. This is most apparent when fighting Coldman, as he takes his time defeating due to using a rapid firing buster that lacks strength. But because of his rapid fire, this makes certain attacks easy to destroy. Speaking of the Robot Masters, they range from tolerable to downright difficult. Coldman and Groundman are the more tolerable ones, my favorite one being Groundman. Coldman slices ice wall across the ground and shoots at a Muko Kamuko that hinders movement. Groundman moves across the ground, barrels on the ground, shoots his spread drill, and unleashes his massive drill. These boss fights aren't that bad at all, but the more you play the game, the worse the difficulty gets. In the beginning, the Robot Museum, not to be confused with the Robot Museum from 7, references obstacles and enemies from past Mega Man games. But then instead of choosing which stage to go to, the stages have to be unlocked. At first, your three options are Coldman, Astroman, and Groundman. Upon defeating them, more stages can be accessible, which leads up to the Crystal Gate where Mega Man and Bass can use their weapons to earn more bolts for the shop. Afterwards, this leads to King's Castle. The Frozen Land ruins and the underground city aren't the worst, despite the hazards these stages have. Whether it's spikes under ice, dig walls that drill through the ground, or solving the Count Ghana puzzle that returns from Mega Man 8. I had a decent time with these, but the same can't be said for the remainder. The Marine Rag is a spike haven, either with spike balls or regular spikes. The Burning Jungle is home of the gory type robots and the big tillies that drop incendiary grenades that cause a wildfire. Unlike from Extreme 2 that causes some significant damage, the fire here is instant kill. This is made even worse when fighting to avoid making contact with the flames. And the fight against Burner Man isn't better. His wave burner blocks all types of shots, there's barely room to back away from him, and this is made even worse with his bear traps. Even using the ice wall is a gamble because it may or may not push him to the spike trap. Burner Man is one of those fights that you just want to defeat as quickly as possible, but the wave burner is fun to use. One of my favorite weapons. Another not so great stage is Sky Metropolis, which starts with an auto scroll of all things that also acts as a crushing hazard, so avoiding the Muko Kamuko while trying to get the 1-up is a gamble. Hopping on these balloons is a make or break because there won't be a second shot to get across. Then there are a lot of spike balls to avoid, similar to the spike balls from the Marine Rack, and pipes that can provide a breeze that helps with jumping or may hinder movement. So far, the Burning Jungle and Sky Metropolis are the worst stages this game provides. The others are a mixed bag for me. The virtual planetarium is home with some Yoko block action, especially with over spikes. Playing Simon Says as getting the answer wrong results in the melody response cannon open firing, and blocks that rise when stepped on. The Hyper Electric plant has these long conveyor belts to ride on. The move cannon, which I classify as the worst mini boss in the series thus far, especially if the hatchet are destroyed and the cannons themselves continue their assault. The spotlight that illuminates the way to go on its own axis, which is actually not that bad. And destroying these bombs that may be better off left intact. And of course, I have to address Dynamo Man. The dashing, the electric balls that track, the potential lightning bolts, the electric drones, and him healing himself. Take a pick which ones are more of a pain to deal with. The robotic theme park is like if the robot circus from Mega Man 8 was crammed into a box. The biggest problem I had were not seeing what's above, so getting blindsided by the Kaizak when ascending is an issue. Rompers jumping from the ceiling and shaking away screws. And then there's Magic Man, who either throws a magic card that seals health, an orb that has a romper inside, and an orb that has birds. Also, he dashes around like Dynamo Man does. Another boss that I dislike, and there's more. Pirate Man's fight gets worse as the water level lowers, the remote mines get progressively harder to avoid, and him bouncing around in his bubble is not much better. Another boss that needs to go immediately. Strangely enough, Astro Man and Tengu Man return from Mega Man 8. I honestly prefer original Royal Masters rather than reusing old ones, but this game is meant to be an alternate solution for those who didn't have a PlayStation. Astro Man is way more hostile than he was in 8. Instead of summoning a meteor shower, Astro Man creates copies of himself and summons enemies from the ground, and when he's summoning those enemies, he's open for a brief moment. He's not all that bad, but he's more difficult than he was from the last game. Tengu Man barely has any differences. The one attack he doesn't do is the whirlwind attack that sends Mega Man off the edge. So Tengu Man isn't that different here, at least from what I've seen. After all that mayhem, there's King's Castle with Wily at the end. The first part of the castle is a combination of the obstacles and hazards from the other stages, but the Mio Proto this time I would argue is made even worse. Unlike in Mega Man 8 where Mega Man has to kick the Mega Ball with accuracy, the Mio Proto has to be struck by adding weight on the scale to make the head appear, all while avoiding missiles and the Mo King. As soon as the fight ends, jump off the platform immediately as it will fall into the pit of lava. Failing to do so will result in death. And then comes the second part of the castle. At first, the stage starts off with some regular jumping and shooting, but then comes the King Tank. The King Tank fires bullets, drops bombs, rams into walls, and drops rompers. There are 3 parts of the tank that need to be destroyed. After that, the stage continues. After gathering some items and climbing ladders, the King Plane arrives. This one fires a beam with a large radius that Base can easily prevent with his rapid fire buster. Mega Man might as well use a weapon to counter this. Then there's the fist attack that destroys platforms. This is the worst attack in the arsenal because this means one false move results in falling, and it's already bad enough that frequently jumping is required. Where's Rush when you need him? No, seriously, where's Rush? He's nowhere to be seen in this game. It would have been beneficial for some Gradius UN Squadron action, but nope, not in this game. Oh, and Flash Bombs blind the whole area briefly. After that, the stage continues. After using some ice to get across some spikes and make some jumps, it's time to fight against King, right after Proto Man breaks his shield. And again, he's another boss that needs to go right away. Use the energy saver, spam lightning bolt, because after this comes the Jet King Robo. This one is a combination of both the tank and the plane, so it has the same attacks as last time. Dropping bombs, the big beam attack, ramming, and this little light attack that feels like you're trying to swat a fly. And if you're playing as Base, there is no platform to make this fight bearable, all because he can aim upward. After that, the stage ends. Why this stage was split into 2 is beyond me. All that's left is to fight Wily. Instead of going from room to room via teleportation, Mega Man and Base go through a regular structured stage with fights in between. Almost like how Mega Man X handled the refights by fighting the Mavericks as X went deeper into Sigma's hideout. The segments that lead up to the Robot Master provides a clue to which Robot Master will be approached. Some obstacles may include walking on Yoku blocks, again, using a weapon to cross a gap, or going through familiar territory. Once all the Robot Masters are taken care of, it's time to fight Wily. Luckily, I discovered a cheat strategy for the first fight, but the second fight actually requires effort. I'm actually getting some deja vu from this fight from Mega Man 8. So the castle fight this time wasn't too bad, unless Wily appears, causing contact damage. Wily is defeated with no imprisonment and castle explosion to speak of, like in the past titles. Actually about the plot. This is where the classic series goes into what I call X territory, because the antagonist known as King believes in robot supremacy and builds boss's army. King forces Wily out of his own castle and King proceeds to his plans, which are crushed by Mega Man and Bass. Even after Wily took control of his castle again and forced King to fight. After another fight, Mega Man and Bass, with some assistance from Proto Man, defeat Wily and destroy any or all attempts to build King 2. Bass wonders why he can't defeat Mega Man, which Proto Man answers by saying that Bass has nothing to protect, while Mega Man is bummed out that he wasn't able to save King. But King survived and sent Mega Man a letter. Honestly, it would have been better if King didn't survive. Not because he doesn't appear again, but because Mega Man will learn the lesson of how high the price for peace is. Like the old saying goes, the price of peace is often high. As I said before, you're better on playing Mega Man 8 because Mega Man and Bass steps up the difficulty to large extremes, all while removing what worked in past games. There are no E-Tanks, no W-Tanks, Rush doesn't appear with his coiler jet, but the shop still has useful items to buy. Buster upgrades, auto healing, energy balancer, etc. The weapons are actually pretty good. The wave burner, spread drill, Ice Wall, and Remote Mine were well used in my playthrough, especially the Ice Wall. The other weapons were more situational for me. The Magic Card can grab items, the Lightning Bolt strikes any enemy in sight, the Tengu Blade is perfect for close range and also alters the dash. I wish it didn't because that consumes energy. And the Copy Vision was useful for some of the heavy lifting. Boss fights weren't enjoyable as you were in 7 and 8, stages get progressively harder as you go, and the fact that Keiji Inafune wanted this game as hard as possible just makes this game even worse. There's barely any enjoyment in this game, and even though I praise the weapons, Bass being playable, in some levels like the frozen lab ruins of the underground city, Mega Man and Bass is indeed difficult, just not in a good way. I like difficulty that has a perfect mix of fairness and challenge. This is more difficult than fair, and with an upside balance like that, that's a recipe for disaster, and that's what I see in this game. It's difficult for the wrong reasons. Mega Man 9 is a game that fans have been greatly waiting for. As the X-Zero and ZX series will continue alongside some spin-offs, the classic series didn't return until Inti Creates at the helm for the next two games, 9 and 10. The end result are two games that left a lot to be desired. Starting with the plot, as this goes deeper into X territory, robots are rampaging once again and people put the blame on Wily. But Wily had nothing to do with this attack, and these robots belong to Dr. Light. Wily then provides a recording of Dr. Light expressing his desire of world domination. Due to this, Dr. Light has been arrested. Mega Man suits up and puts a stop to these rampaging robots, which is revealed later that these robots were scheduled to be scrapped, but Dr. Wily found use for them and basically deceived them into working for him. Mega Man defeats Wily and is basically fed up with Wily's shenanigans. He then rescues Dr. Light, which Proto Man warns Mega Man that is a trap. So Mega Man rescues what he thinks is Dr. Light, but it was a robot disguising as him. Wily escapes the exploding fortress, with Proto Man rescuing Mega Man as he worries about the fake robot. I can't tell if he's too kind for his own good or not. Dr. Light is found innocent and Dr. Wily goes into hiding. The one plot point that interests me the most is how robots have expiration dates. After all the damage the robot masters have caused, it was only natural that some embargo was placed on them to ensure that they don't cause a ruckus, but it wouldn't go so far as to just scrap them. This plot point is explored further in another game, but in order to prevent robots from going, well, maverick, it was decided that robots would be scrapped to avoid any more casualties. I consider this a small step towards the X series, but for now, this is just Dr. Wily manipulating Dr. Light's robots into working for him and deceiving the public. He may be a scientist, but he's definitely not a good liar. As for the gameplay, the series has gone back to its roots, as stated by Keiji Inafune that this was meant to be a throwback to the old days. It was meant to go back to the old style. Graphics, gameplay, music, the whole package. It's understandable that they went back to the old 8-bit style, but I think they could have done more than just go directly back to the 8-bit style. The sprite work still maintains the look and feel of the old Mega Man games, but I think they could have created something innovative. Here's what Mega Man 9 looks like, and compare that to Mega Man Shattered Diamond. It's not a fair comparison because Shattered Diamond is a fan game, but at least 9 could have changed the sprite work for the characters to make them more expressive. 9 does a good job at that already, but it could have done more. Adding some background instead of just a basic color, or having other weapons having a charger variant. There was more that could have been done with Mega Man 9, but instead it went back to the first two games, all the way back. Mega Man doesn't have his charge shot or slide. He can only charge one weapon. He still needs energy balancer to refill weapons. Weapons don't refill during the Wily stages like they did in Mega Man 7. Spikes on the ceiling, a guard ability that only works for one stage and not a permanent upgrade. And is there really a reason to spend 200 screws just to change Roll's outfit? Really? You can't even play as Roll in this game, so it's worthless. And I also hate how you have to scroll through the dialogue of the item you want instead of just being briefed on what the items do. Yokai Blocks return their infamous role as dreadful platforms. These magma pillars might as well be the one-hit kill lasers, which is made even worse when Mega Man has to use the concrete shot to freeze them and use them as platforms, which can be suicidal. There are no yellow devils, but there is the twin devil, which is basically the yellow devil split in two. These laser blocks that can be blocked with the concrete shot and Mega Man has enough energy for it. Without it, he's basically stuck in how to take hits, if he can. The second round is positioned before the fight against Wily, so getting a game over means fighting all the Royal Masters again. Using an M10 can potentially damage your eardrums as it refuels weapons one by one instead of simultaneously. Between this and base, I think I would prefer base, but that's not saying much because of the nefarious difficulty base has. At least Mega Man has a slide and charge shot, at least the store has items that boost buster power, an auto heal, and an energy saver that makes weapons consume less energy. Mega Man 9 didn't carry over the improvements the previous game had, all while going back to where the franchise began in full force, rather than being innovative while maintaining the retro approach. Mega Man 9 is a downgrade. The levels themselves can be a death trap or an actual obstacle to overcome. The geothermal generator has lava and magnet beams that are instant kill. The horticulture gardens is riddled with spikes. The cosmic observatory has bun bee catchers that try to pull Mega Man either towards spikes or away from something that can help him. Jerks. The television factory has Yokai Blocks, and you already know how I feel about that. The gemstone caverns has these swings that Mega Man needs to use to traverse through the caverns and also need to avoid spikes. The marine research lab borrows from Waveman a bit and has its own spike fetish, combined with platforming on the splash platforms. The forest dam has fake platforms, borrows from Toadman, and has enemies that appear from pits, and has 3 Paizo's to fight. The weather platform is kinda the more interesting stage. Mega Man spins on these tornado platforms, which you can drop from or jump off of. Platforms are hidden in the gray clouds, and there's this ice platforming section that doesn't do too much. Now for the Robot Masters. Man Man is easily my least favorite as he jumps and shoots everywhere and this terrain doesn't help. Galaxy Man plays peekaboo with his black hole bombs. Tornado Man offers the worst blowjobs imaginable. Splash Woman I kinda like as she summons robot fishes by singing and attacks using her trident. Hornet Man reminds me of Snake Man as he summons 3 Hornet Chasers and runs across the stage. Concrete Man is also alright. He freezes Mega Man with concrete and either stomps on the ground or rams in the wall. Jewel Man runs back and forth and jumps when Mega Man jumps with jewel satellites surrounding him. And Plug Man shoots his plug balls that travel all over the room and tries Mega Man's movements. Out of all these Robot Masters, Splash Woman is my favorite one. And as a small Easter egg, if you look closely at Mega Man, Galaxy Man, Tornado Man, and Splash Woman, they bear similarities to the Guardians of X from Mega Man 0. Magma Man and Fighting Fafnir both use destructive fire attacks. Splash Woman and Fairy Leviathan use a staff-like weapon, have mermaid-like qualities. Galaxy Man and Hidden Phantom can disappear and reappear and even move similar when Galaxy Man swords across or when Phantom rides on the shuriken. And Tornado Man and Sage Harpooner just look like twins, as well as having wind-based attacks. After the stages, it's time to go after Wily. First part is a mix of obstacles from the Royal Master stages, including its own obstacles. The second part consists of ladder climbing and avoiding spikes underwater. Third part is about messing with gravity and fake one-ups. Awesome. The final part is against Royal Masters again in Wily's Dino Machine. This one really tested my patience because the first part requires these eggs to make contact with the lower jaw to damage it. Second comes attacking the jaw itself while avoiding getting crushed and burned. The flamethrower tries to make him his location. The last part is Wily himself. From his usual orbit tag to fire 6 bolts, 3 on the ground and 3 from above. After all of that, there is one more Royal Master left named Fake Man, but I didn't bother with the remaining content in Mega Man 9 because I really don't want to. Moving on. These were short-lived due to robots going on a rampage because of an illness known as Robo-Enza, and since Wily is clearly not the mastermind behind this catastrophe, he and Dr. Light worked together to develop a cure while Mega Man and Proto Man teamed up to stop the rampaging robots. Would have been nice to have a switch mechanic in gameplay though. Speaking of these two, you have the choice to choose between Mega Man and Proto Man. Mega Man is all-rounded as he takes regular damage and cannot slide a charge shot. Proto Man takes double damage, but he can slide, charge his shots, and buff projectiles with his shield when jumping. I chose Proto Man because he has his light and the charge shot. As Mega Man and Proto Man continue their mission, they get infected by the illness, but they use a cure to fix themselves up. Turns out that Wily created Robot Enza to force robots to work for him. Then and only then would he develop cures. This would be the foundation to create a new virus that would cause maverick outbreaks in the X series after the awakening of Zero. In Mega Man 10, Robot Enza causes robots to become sick and eventually break out into a frenzy. This is another small step into the X series. After Mega Man and Proto Man defeat Wily, he also becomes feverish. At first I thought it was because he wasn't breathing due to him being in outer space, but no, Wily got sick apparently. After a few days, he leaves behind a bunch of cures and goes into hiding. So far, the classic series introduced evil energy that infects the mind and harnesses the evil within, robot supremacy, expiration dates that schedules robots to be scrapped in order to avoid any more casualties, and now Robo Enza that causes robots to get sick and go on a rampage in due time. I'm looking forward to Mega Man 11 at this point. In fact, I was looking forward to Mega Man 11 because Mega Man 10, I found little enjoyment. Here's a rundown. Cyberspace has these color blocks that slowly disappear when stepped on, conveyor belts that activate platforms that need power, and Yoko blocks. I found some enjoyment in the stage, but didn't like the Yoko blocks, as usual. The ancient castle had these seesaws that need to be stepped on in order to move, and tri-castles to fight. I really didn't mind the spikes in the ceiling, as this encourages jumps at a minimum. This one was alright. The solar generators, like if the Steel Refinery from Mega Man 1 was back with a vengeance. Tons of ladder climbing, conveyor belts, the chain key make a comeback, and Suzak and Phoenix are basically the bird version of Heat Man. I have mixed feelings about this stage, but this is better than the geothermal generator, that's what's most important. The filtration sewers has some waterwork gimmicks, whether it's the water gushing downward, hindering movement, moving around in the bubble, or these breed of metars called Numtals that shoot a gooey substance that makes someone with this attached to them slippery. I kinda like this one. What I dislike about it are the spikes on the ceiling, as usual. The desert barracks, I really hate this one. Sandstorms that block visuals and also pushes Mega Man and Proto Man back towards spikes, and fire bonds that shoot from pits. Did not enjoy that. The baseball stadium has these annoying sprinkling that bursts out shooting when shot at, and there's even one that blindsides Mega Man and Proto Man when they jump down from the ladder. The cargo cues are annoying, and they're more annoying combined with the Daka lockers. Get me out of here. The polar depths have these ice blocks that break when stepped on or shot at, making platforming dreadful than it already is, especially when swallow eggs and sewer stamps are involved. The areas with the R-Suzies aren't that bad though, so at least there was some enjoyment. The highway has these robotic transporters that can be an ally or a menace, depending on their direction, especially when they ride towards spikes. This is a neat idea if it wasn't for trying to get an E-tank or 1-ups. Then they become a nuisance. So out of all these stages this game provides before going after Wily, the ancient castle is where most of my enjoyment lies, while the desert barracks is the absolute worst. For boss fights, Sheepman hides in his walls and strikes with lightning bolts, with one he's hiding in spreading bolts on the ground. Blade Man hops on walls and ceilings while throwing blades. Solomon jumps and blasts solar energy at both sides, all while defending himself with the sun on his head to make it bigger. Pumpman defends himself with his water shield and shoots it out like a Wily boss. Commando Man shoots missiles that spread on contact and trembles the ground while slamming downward. Strike Man throws his rebound strike and rolling around Blizzard Man style. Chill Man can freeze his opponents on contact while leaving chill spikes in the ground and walls, and Nurture Man slides around and throws wheels. He also tracks with his wheels or simply jumps on his target. Out of all these Raw Masters, Blade Man and Pump Man have the best fights. They're not too easy nor too difficult, or annoying. Moving on to Wily. The first part consists of fighting weapon archives, which archives data of past Robot Masters, specifically Like Man, Wood Man, Gemini Man, Ring Man, Napalm Man, Flame Man, Slash Man, which is a horrible choice, Frost Man, and Tornado Man. As far as the stage itself, it borrows gimmicks from cyberspace. The second part, I absolutely hate. Ice blocks his platforms. Pressures that can crush anything, which is made even worse when spikes are involved. Oh yeah, and spikes everywhere. Also, was it really that hard to make a background for this? This may be an 8-bit game, but that's no excuse to make this level even more lifeless than it already is. But the boss at the end is cool. Sometimes I like bosses that you shoot parts off of. The third stage has an elevator that is used to avoid spikes while ascending. Spikes underwater while using the seesaw, and a block devil that's worse than the block devil from Mega Man 2. The ice shoots lasers. I hate devils in the Mega Man series. I hate them so much. After a long ladder climb and fighting the Royal Masters again, it's time to fight another Wily machine. This time with a pirate hat that shoots long, hard missiles and little ones. After that, Wily shoots these electro traps and some spiraling orb thingy. I'm at the home stretch, so let's just end this. Inside the upside down space station, there are moles, tanks for the taking, if they can be taken, and then there are two Wileys. One is fake while the other one sneezes. I like this setup, and it's a shame they don't do this more often. Of course, if that were to happen, then the end result would be horrifying. So just to get this out of my life, I honestly didn't enjoy 10 as much as I wanted to. It feels like it doubles down on some gimmicks that it really didn't need to have from the get-go. Enemies from pits, spikes all over the place, annoying bosses, and the fact that Mega Man once again doesn't have his slide and charge shot, which prompted me to play as Proto Man. There's no character switching, weapons don't refill during Wily stages. Let's just move on to Mega Man 11 and end this already. In Mega Man 11, Wily provides his old gadget called the Double Gear System. He uses it to capture Light's robots who are going through their maintenance checkup. So instead of just scrapping them, the robots now have to be examined for any anomalies that could cause them to go berserk. After Wily steals Dr. Light's robots, Light upgrades Mega Man with a prototype double gear system capable of bestowing speed and power boosts. The speed gear allows Mega Man to speed up, which in his point of view looks like a slowdown. The power gear allows him to charge up to 2 charge shots and increase rate of fire. After defeating 4 Robot Masters, Dr. Light explains the origins of the double gear system to Mega Man. Dr. Light and Dr. Wily were partners that had their own ideals of robotics. Dr. Light wanted humans to coexist with robots, and to accomplish this, he studied robots with independent thought, while Wily wanted robots to basically be weapons, so he invented a device that can amplify their power and speed. The committee agreed to Thomas's research over Albert's, thus ending the relationship between Dr. Light and Dr. Wily, prompting Wily to embark on his crusade of world domination. Robots with independent thought. Dr. Light found the means to create Reploids. In other words, he's discovering how to create Mega Man X. All Dr. Light wanted is to create a future where robots and humans can live together in harmony, free from any turmoil or war. After defeating the remaining Robot Masters, Wily reveals his location and possibly his social security number,
Point E1685578.
which leads to the Gear Fortress. After a confrontation with Wily, Dr. Light tries to convince Dr. Wily how both Mega Man and the Double Gear system create a satisfying result on both ideals, but to Dr. Wily, he won't rest until he succeeds in world domination. Afterwards, it's back to business, this time with the Double Gear system in work. And believe it or not, that's how Mega Man 11 ends. Wily leaves and everyone returns to their usual duties. This ending sucks. No secret ending, no epilogue that can hint what could happen next, and Proto Man and Base are nowhere to be seen in this game, not even as playable characters. Compared to Mega Man Unlimited, Unlimited has a way better ending. Spoilers for Unlimited if you haven't played the game. Zero, who isn't finished, wakes up and punches Mega Man's buster right off his arm. Zero breaks down and Wily retrieves him. Mega Man escapes with barely any energy to spare after the thrashing he manages to survive through, and he's saved by Base just before the castle explodes. Proto Man sees this from afar, and Base ensures that Mega Man lives so that he may exact his revenge. Mega Man is repaired and Dr. Light discovers limitless potential. As you can clearly see, Unlimited attempts to bridge the gap between Classic and the X series, while Mega Man 11 discloses what happened between Thomas and Albert in their younger years and revealed their ideals to create both X and Zero respectively. The ending left a whole lot to be desired, which is disappointing because taking into account what happened in Base 9 and 10, you would think that 11 will push the narrative further to close the gap between Classic and X, but this quirky ending is all it provides. Lame. Unlimited steered the series to where it needed to go despite it being a fan game. Mega Man 11 might as well be the ending of Mega Man 4, just not with a trap door. In terms of gameplay, it's exactly where 9 and 10 should have been. Despite activity isn't as frantic as it was last time, no one-hit kill lasers, not too much Joker block activity, but there is a yellow devil. Use a power gear with a chain blast, it'll save you both time and sanity. And there is a wall of fire that isn't a kill, but is better than the fire away from the burning jungle, that's what's most important. Enemies do appear from pits, but it's not as obnoxious as they were previously. In fact, the one stage that I consider the most hazardous is the Frozen Museum with its icicle spikes, chasms between platforms, and a strong wind that blows Mega Man with these. Then there's the Chemical Foundry that has the usual jumping over spikes in liquid. Seriously, these kind of jumps are going to be the cause of some of the anxiety. Other than that, Mega Man 11 isn't that bad to play. My favorite stage is the high voltage generator, as there are no spikes, no lasers, but there is a lot of electricity play here, which can be mitigated with the bounce ball. The best weapons to use here are the blazing torch, which has a good angle against enemies, pile driver, which is useful for an up close approach and as an air dash, acid barrier that grants a barrier made of acid, and an acid shooter, which reminds me of the water balloon from 8. Thunderstorm is a nice vertical ice attack with an awesome area attack when using the power gear, and the bounce ball, which is basically an upgraded rebound striker. quicker, especially with the power gear. I did find some use with the chain blast, and the block dropper was situational for getting the drop on some enemies. The thunder scrambler can be aimed upward or downward, and it travels across any terrain. This is extremely useful with the power gear. Actually, about the gears, the speed gear is used to make perilous platforming in dangerous areas a bit safer, but can actually be used to add more damage than usual. The power gear is a power boost. It increases fire rate, increases the charge up to 2 charge shots, and it charges all the weapons. I repeat, the power gear charges all the weapons. This is how you can tell the classic series is getting into X territory, when Mega Man with the power gear is charging weapons. Usually he can charge up to 1 weapon, and then in 7 he can charge 2 weapons. The nose cross charge is so weird, but now in 11 he can charge all his weapons. I hope that this is a staple. In fact, I hope the double gear is just a staple overall, but it gets revamped in ways that can affect Mega Man greatly, whether it's improving his base movement or improving his buster. I also think that this is how Dr. Light found the idea of creating upgrades for X and leaving them in the capsules that were scattered throughout the world. So the double gear system can unlock more possibilities for Mega Man to upgrade almost everything. His speed, his power. The only concern after that is his defense. This is what I hope for what the classic series becomes. I hope it becomes more like X. Removing all the classic gimmicks is one thing, but adding certain gameplay mechanics and designs from the X series is what can make the classic series better than what it was in 6, 7, or 8. So even though the story was underwhelming in 11, gameplay wise it's a step in the right direction. But this is still a classic game, so there's still some classic mishaps. But as stated previously, most of them aren't present here. The Boing Boing Park has all these balloons to bounce off of, and hand slappers that slice Mega Man across gaps. Turquoise Temples has all these falling blocks and these little mazes to go through. Blastman Adventures has explosions. Lots and lots of explosions. Speed Gear is going to be your best friend if you want Mega Man to have those 1-ups. Camp Mental, besides the instant kill firewall, has a neat feature that comes off as a double-edged sword. These lampers act as lanterns that can be used to see, but light lanterns, putting this out means not being able to see in the dark. So I think this stage requires proper judgment on what gets blown up or not. The shop returns with the usual 1-ups and tanks, but Auto can also make parts. From the usual energy balancer to the bus upgrade, shock absorber which negates the recoil when using charge shots, and a tank container that increases the capacity of acquired E-tanks and W-tanks. There are also some other parts that can be available after satisfying a specific criterion, such as using Rush a certain amount of times, or using the double gear system frequently, or getting a game over 10 times. Why this wasn't just a normal purchase at the store is beyond me. After that, nothing but Gear Fortress, and thankfully the stages aren't that egregious. First part has some spinning platforms here, some minimal Yoko block action here, and the only time he jumps through a spike hallway, and it's not that long either. The only thing I hate about this is the Yellow Devil, which I had to play through twice because my game crashed. The stage after that isn't that bad. Plenty of blockades to power drive through, and this giant skull crusher. I like this more than the firewall, as the travel speed is acceptably slower. Then after the second round and enjoying a ride to Wily shows himself in his missile barrage machine. He also shoots swirling W's, reminding me of the first fight. The capsule fight isn't that bad either, but trying to land hits on this guy during the second half is more difficult without the speed gear. Afterwards, he resorts to plan B.
Me! I'm a helpless old man! Mercy, Mega Man!
Or not, apparently. Mega Man 11 is easily the second best game in the series. It barely has any of the classic nonsense that I loathe with my entire being, and with the double gear system brings out the best in classic Mega Man thus far. Sadly, there's no gathering items and stages or rush adapters, but I think those scraps were necessary. 7 had the means to justify backtracking, so perhaps another entry, if Capcom actually has the right motivation to do so. So that's the classic Mega Man series. It starts off on a rocky start, but after 3 or 4 entries, it starts showing improvement. Then comes Mega Man 7 and 8 with its improved gameplay and presentations, for the most part. But then it starts losing its touch with base, with its absurd difficulty, and then 9 and 10 just goes back to its roots without much innovation. Then Mega Man 11 shows up with its refreshing presentation and gameplay, with the double gear system being the main attraction. So with all this in mind, what do I consider the best and worst of classic Mega Man? Going from best to worst, I could total totem pole, obviously Mega Man 7 is way up there, with a story that introduces base, backtracking to collect items, and escaping from stages like in the X games, and that glorious ending that adds conflict to Mega Man's morals. 7 is on top of the list, no question. Then comes 11 with this double gear system, a good mix of challenge and fairness, and the best voice acting in the series thus far.
The double gear system. It was so very long ago. It was on that day, Wily and I had our falling out. He quite literally threw a wrench in our gears.
Oh, brother, there's no end to him. Doc, how about giving your favorite assistant a break?
I don't need a break, Otto. You know, for a robot, you sure do complain a lot. Now let's crank it up a gear.
Gear Fortress? That's all we needed. I'm heading out, Dr. Light.
11 is easily the silver medal list for me. Going for bronze is Mega Man 8. Though the voice acting is amateurish and cringy, I believe the story it tells shapes the future of the classic series. Evil energy is to start as some sort of virus outbreak, but later in the series that tradition will continue as the classic series enters the X territory. Besides the story, this is the best looking Mega Man game in the series. I can practically enjoy this game visually. Not even visually, the sounds, the soundtrack. Mega Man 8 is beautiful both in sound and in art style. Though there are some gripes with the gameplay itself, I don't think it's that bad. Whether it was the maze in the planetarium or the jump slide in the Arctic City, I had a decent time with this one. 8 deserves the 3rd seat on the pedestal. 4th is Mega Man 6 with the introduction of the rush adapters, branching pathways that encourages usage of those adapters, and most of the stages aren't that bad to play through. 5th is, well, Mega Man 5. This is where I think the series really shines in terms of presentation. Visually stunning and a superb soundtrack. There are some problems, but that didn't keep me from feeling frustrated or annoyed. Mega Man 5 is well deserved of the number in its title. 6 is Mega Man 4 that introduced the charge shot as well as hidden items to find. I do like some of the stages that the game provides, but I didn't have too much of a rough time with it. I think this is a game that starts to have more balanced difficulty. There wasn't much that irritated me or made me just want to drop the controller and call it a day. I think that 4 was a step in the right direction, but I think it could have used more attention on the drawing board. I'm gonna go with Mega Man in base for 7th place. Despite his notorious difficulty, I did like playing as base most of the time. His dash, double jump, and his buster, once upgraded, made him a character worth playing throughout this brutal experience. There were some bosses that I didn't enjoy, and near the end I just wanted it to end. I think base would have been better if the game eased up on hazards, tweaked boss fights to make them enjoyable, looking at you Magic Man, splitting the second king stage in half and allowing character switching during gameplay. 8th is Mega Man 9. Even though I don't agree with the lack of innovation, the geothermal generator being a literal death trap, Mega Man included, how Mega Man doesn't have the charge shot or the slide, being forced to use a concrete shot to advance through the lasers, how spike happy the horticulture gardens are, and the Wally fights. There are some neat ideas and callbacks that I thought were intriguing. If Mega Man 9 was more like, say, Mega Man 5 or 6, then would have no doubt that 9 would have been amazing, for me at least. 9th place goes to Mega Man 3. Even though I hated the Doc robots, Shadow Man, the Yellow Devil, and the Copy robots, the levels in this were enjoyable. Even the Wally stages weren't that bad for the most part. Plus, 3 introduced a side which I consider a godsend for Mega Man, as he desperately needed some added mobility. I did like the stages more than the Robot Master fights, so I think that's where my positives reside the most. 10th is, ironically enough, Mega Man 10. Proto Man is playable, though you can't switch to Mega Man during gameplay. The stages and boss fights left mixed feelings as I played, and as I progressed, I just tried to brute force it as much as I could because I was that annoyed with it. 10 is honestly a mixed bag. There were aspects that I liked and some that irritated me. Mega Man 1 takes the 11th spot. This one being the first game ever is rough around the edges and I think is worthy of receiving touch-ups. Saving progress, E and W change, some overhauls in level design, and I think just general improvements all around. This may be the start of the series, but clearly there are plenty of issues that could have been addressed back in the day. At the very least, add an escape option when going for that magnet beam. 12th is Powered Up. I gave it some thought and I think this remake needed some revamping. The screen needs work as everything is scrunched together, thus making platforming and boss fights difficult on the smaller screen. If Mega Man Maverick Hunter X can improve even the smaller aspect on the original on a small device, then Powered Up should do the same. That's not the case here. Due to the smaller screen, the Steel Foundry is significantly harder and some stages even had inferior redesigns. The electricity tower now has foot holders, the sniper drills and picklemen are quick to use their shields, thus making them harder to defeat. CWU-01P is just borderline intolerable in this one, and the Yellow Devil is now an endurance test. And don't even get me started on the Wily fight. Sure, you can play as Proto Man, roll in the Royal Masters once they're rescued, but in a game like this? Pass. And last place goes to Mega Man 2. The way it's supposed to center is annoying because the Yoko blocks and how the 1-up is basically bait without the second item. The underground lab sucks because of the instant kill lasers. Enemies can get the drop on Mega Man when he's climbing a ladder at the pipeline tower. Getting pinched by sniper Joes is never okay. The Boom Beam Trap is a poorly designed boss. And the fact that weapons are required to defeat both the Boom Beam Trap and the alien, which is the same problem with the one they fight in Mega Man 4. I honestly didn't like playing Mega Man 2 that much. If the restrictions were lifted and the gameplay was more flexible, then I would have a better time with it. But I can't for the life of me enjoy Mega Man 2. Not everything in this game is as intense or difficult compared to what I dislike, especially on difficult difficulty, but for the problems I addressed earlier, they're not well designed in the first place. Why place an E-Tank in an area that Mega Man can't get out if he doesn't have the second item? Why riddle these floors with fake flooring? Why not refill weapons and items knowing that Mega Man needs these in order to progress? This is what I hate about the classics and why I personally don't play them as often. In fact, the overall problems that the classic series has are weapons not refilling in the Wily stages, instant kill lasers, yellow devils, spikes galore, Yoku blocks, robot masters that jump all over the place or do chunks of damage, enemies appearing from holes, refights taking place before the last boss fight, bosses only vulnerable to one weapon, health tanks or 1-ups in pocket spaces that's easy to bonk your head and fall into spikes or a gap, footholders, the escape unit not in the menu by default, the constant need for the energy balancer instead of just collecting weapon energy for weapons by default, dark robots, and how in the Legacy Collection pressing start doesn't bring up the weapon menu. That has happened so many times and I will never understand why the select button is the weapon menu. But all that said, it was an enlightening experience revisiting and playing some of these games for the first time because now I know where my standards lie with the classic series in terms of what I like and especially what I dislike and hate. There's a reason why I only stick with the X-Zero and ZX series. Not because of the improved gameplay, but because they don't go as hard with the hazards that the classic series does. I would enjoy a classic Mega Man game that was less classic. All the things that I hate about classic and what it needs to be in terms of enjoyment is what makes a good classic Mega Man game. And with games like Mega Man 7 and 11, I can see that. Earlier this year, Capcom was considering how to make Mega Man games on an ongoing basis. I say that the classic series needs to be more like X and add the features that the X series has, like collecting sub-tanks, upgrading Mega Man with different armor parts, or collecting items like in the X series. And since the classic series is going further and further into X territory, that would make sense. I wouldn't say the classic should become X, but be similar to it. I can't imagine Mega Man jumping into capsules and obtaining armor parts, but now that he has the double gear system and Rush has his adapters and other transformations, there's room for growth for the classic series and gimmicks that it can and should live without. Classic Mega Man isn't the best, but it definitely shouldn't be the worst either.
But where is Dr. Wily?
That's a good question. We may be able to locate another energy emission from the radar room. When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wily.
They seriously couldn't redub this in the Legacy Collection.